Hello and welcome to the arcade. You know, ever since I was a kid, I've always loved gaming, especially PC gaming. The first games that I ever played were on my family's DOS computer at home and my grandparents' Windows 95 PC at their house. And over the years, I never fell out of love with PC gaming, even when I got my first PlayStation 2 and my first Game Boy Advance. There was just something that always kept me coming back to the classic genres on PC, like the RTS, which could barely function on consoles anyway, and the first-person shooter, which I always felt like controlled a little bit better on mouse and keyboard than on a controller. And over the years, I've collected a small treasure trove of big box PC games, and I never really traded any of them away or sold any of them. Partially because GameStop never took PC games for trade-in credit, but also because it's just really easy to get attached to these big box PC games. Each one of them is like a Christmas present that, even before installing the game, you can wonder endlessly about what you'll find inside. So today I want to show you my big box PC game collection along with some other oddities. And it's not my entire game collection or anything like that, and it's certainly not the biggest or baddest PC game collection here on YouTube, but these are some games that I really love and care about and want to share that with you. So let's talk about them. Let's start with the oddities that I found in the big old cardboard box that was full of all my old PC games, at least the ones that I managed to hang on to. So the first was this $20 Steam gift card that was a birthday present from my best friend. And then these two BattleNet gift cards that I would buy in between classes when I was attending community college. I would go down to the Target that was close by and get like a hot dog and drink from the cafe. But they also sold these, and I just called it buying Hearthstone packs because that's all I used it for. But yeah, I just kept a couple of these for whatever reason. Another odd one is it's a PC game, but it's not a big box because at the GameStop they were selling PC games in these little sleeves that had a tiny hole punched through the top so you could just fit it on a hanging part of the rack. And it's Far Cry 2 and it was only $10. I can't remember if I grabbed that for myself or if my brother got me that as a present, but either way, Far Cry 2 is a great game. Next we have one that I lost the box for, unfortunately, but it's Rome Total War with Barbarian Invasion. And I hate losing the big boxes, so I'll probably replace that getting one on eBay or something. But Rome Total War was always a favorite of mine of the real-time strategy genre. Harder ones to get into, especially for me being a kid back then, but even just the custom battles that have no pressure at all are just a lot of fun to customize and see if 300 Spartans could really take on an entire army of thousands of soldiers. Next up is a good one, which also I lost the box for, unfortunately, but it's Halo Combat Evolved. This was a Christmas present from my brother, and I was kind of snobby about high-profile first-person shooters back then and didn't really think they were real games, at least compared to CRPGs and RTS games. But this game changed my mind, and I'm glad my brother got this for me, even though I was kind of snobby about first-person shooters back then for some reason. Now here's a weird one that I also lost the box for, even though it wasn't a big box, so it doesn't super count for this, but it's Dungeon Lords, which is a RPG hack and slash, I think. Didn't play too much of it, but it was $2 at Target on the clearance rack when I got it in around like 2010 or 11 or something like that. I wish I still had the sleeve box for it, but these little white sleeves will have to do. Next is another favorite RTS of mine, which was Company of Heroes. I didn't care at the time to keep the box for this one because somehow I managed to get a digital copy for free. I think it was because of a graphics card I had bought back in the day. So I had these, the install discs and the play disc and everything, but once I started getting into having my games digital, I didn't care much, unfortunately, for the boxes back then, but I still have the discs. Alright, next up is a couple games that actually belong to my best friend, and he lent them to me, and unfortunately I never managed to get them back to him. So Star Trek Armada and Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. So a strategy game and a shooter game, both excellent Star Trek games, great PC games that I had a ton of fun with. Next is another great RTS and a little bit underrated. It's Lord of the Rings War of the Ring. So most people know the Battle for Middle-earth series as being the Lord of the Rings strategy game, but this one came a little bit before those, and this was a fantastic game as well. I do have the discs and the manual, but unfortunately lost the box. Here is another fantastic game that I spent hours and hours on as a kid and still play to this day, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. This was always the best version of the game in my opinion, way better than the Nintendo 64, and even better than the arcade version in my opinion. It just controlled so much better, it ran really smooth on the later PC that my dad got, and all the PCs that I eventually built for myself. And it just really was such an immersive racing game, especially for a kid who was a fan of Star Wars, and was a ton of fun. Alright, last two oddities. Here's a great game, Battlefield 1942. This actually belonged to my brother, and I just kind of hung on to it after we both moved out eventually from our parents' house. But one of the best classic shooters of all time. Amazing game, even to play against bots, just to experience the maps in this game and the vehicles. And it's such an immersive combat experience that Battlefield will hopefully get back to with some newer entries. But 1942 was always a shooter that I really enjoyed, even when I was kind of snobby and didn't want to play first-person shooters for some reason. Alright, and the last of the oddities is not really an oddity, but it's not a traditional big box PC collection type game. It's the StarCraft Battle Chest. So this includes the original StarCraft game and the Brood War expansion. And I didn't start with StarCraft 1, I started with StarCraft 2. The first RTS games I played were the Lord of the Rings, War of the Ring, Red Alert, older games like that. And I, for some reason, skipped over StarCraft 1. But when StarCraft 2 was announced by Game Informer with a huge 2-page spread, and I think it had 6 pages in one of the Game Informers actually, I knew I had to play that game. And eventually the Warcraft and StarCraft Battle Chests came out later, and I picked up both of those. I don't know where the Warcraft Battle Chest is, unfortunately, but I loved going through the StarCraft 1 campaign and Brood War campaigns. They were a lot of fun. Alright, so next I'm going to go through games that I liked but weren't my favorites. So first up is BioShock 2. Even though it's not my favorite or a favorite game of mine, it's still an underrated gem. BioShock 2 has some of the most crispy first-person shooter controls ever, and it has a lot of the DNA that made the first BioShock game just feel good to play and feel good to look at. But it's a lot more action-oriented, and I played a ton of the multiplayer of this game, and played a little bit with my best friend as well. Next is a weird one, Darkest of Days. So this is a single-player, first-person shooter, which involves time travel as the main story element. So in the game, you're going back in time to different moments throughout history, and trying to fix whatever went wrong in that moment, just depending on what the mission has for you. But it's really interesting. It didn't run great on my PC at the time when I first got it, but after some upgrades it worked out a lot better. It doesn't run now on AMD GPUs without some work. You gotta do some work to get this thing to run nowadays for some reason. But it works great on NVIDIA GPUs, just not on AMD. But a really interesting and not an amazing game or anything, but it's a little bit underrated because it has such a unique storyline. And the time travel goes back through some real-world, real-life battles that actually happened. And in some cases, you get to bring some overpowered weapons from the future back into the past, so you can absolutely annihilate some people that have just absolutely no chance against future weaponry. So that game was a ton of fun. Another fantastic game, but not really my favorite Bethesda game, is Morrowind. So the third entry in the Elder Scrolls series, and this is the Game of the Year edition, so it includes Blood Moon and Tribunal expansions. And I didn't really play the DLC, but I did play the main story of Morrowind, and I have it on Steam still too, so It's one that I've played through at least once, maybe like 1.5 times, but I always just preferred Skyrim or Oblivion over this one, even though it's still a fantastic game, and I think is the start of when the Elder Scrolls games really started to find their voice. Next up is the Unreal Anthology. So this is a collection of the Unreal shooter games. Unreal Tournament 2004 is really the only one that I played out of this collection, but Unreal Tournament 2004 was some of the most brutal and fast-paced shooting that I ever played, and it was straight up addicting for a long time. And I played the multiplayer and I would always get my butt kicked, but even just playing against bots is a ton of fun because the weapons are fun, the movement is super fun, and the map designs are all really interesting. I will probably eventually go back and play Unreal, because if you can see here, it's kind of glare, but these games, these older first-person shooters look really interesting to me. And I don't think I actually ever played the very first one. Really, all I remember playing is Unreal Tournament 2004. So this is definitely one to go back to and check out. Next up is The Witcher, the Enhanced Edition for PC. And this thing is so heavy, I need to see what's in here. This Enhanced Edition came with, let's see, the regular manual. Let me show this. The regular manual. No, this is not the manual. So this Enhanced Edition came with a little storybook. It says, excerpted from The Last Wish. And it's got story, it's got some pictures. It looks like digital illustrations. I actually never read through this for some reason. But yeah, it's a little story of The Witcher. It's 48 pages. Got some interesting digital illustrations. Wow, I can't believe I actually am just finding out about that. Looking at it now, there's an installation guide, but then there's also the game guide, which this thing is thick as well. 112 pages. So this is not really just a manual. This is like an official guide to the game. This is really interesting. There's maps. Talking about quests. Here's a legend for another map showing all the different spots to go in this location. This is really interesting. So I played the first Witcher and the second Witcher game and never got into the third one. But I did like this first one a lot, and this big box is really cool, this Enhanced Edition. Another thing that came in this that I don't have in here, I think I had it in my car a long time ago, but it came with the soundtrack, but also another CD of music that was music inspired by The Witcher. So music that wasn't officially in the soundtrack, but was part of a collection of music inspired by the Witcher universe, and there were some amazing tracks on there. So that was a really cool one, and this is a nice big box to have in the collection. Next up is Lord of the Rings Conquest, and if you don't know, this game kind of is having a small resurgence right now, at least on YouTube, but it's basically the Star Wars Battlefront, but Lord of the Rings. So in Star Wars Battlefront, you choose either the good guys or bad guys, and you play domination style, capturing points. And this is basically the same as that, and you can play as heroes too, as long as you score high enough. I didn't love this game because the controls always felt a little awkward, but it has some great art and great art style. Nice art direction on this game. Great graphics for the time, and 16-player battles on the online or against bots. So that was definitely fun, but I wanted it to control like the Lord of the Rings games, the hack and slash games that were on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, the Two Towers and Return of the King, and it didn't feel like those at all. So to me, initially it felt a little bit clunky, but I don't know. It's a good game, and like I said, it's having kind of a resurgence, at least on YouTube. Next up is Gothic 3 Forsaken Gods expansion. It's a standalone expansion, so you can play this, you can buy and play this, and it says standalone expansion with 15 to 20 intense hours of all new quests and story. This was just kind of forgettable to me. It didn't really improve upon anything that I loved about Gothic 3, which was one of my favorite games of all time. Great RPG and really underrated RPG from Piranha Bytes. It's always overshadowed by Gothic 2, which is a fantastic game as well, but Gothic 3 for me is where the series kind of really hit its stride, in my opinion. And I think Forsaken Gods had enhanced graphics and resolution and things like that, but it didn't really do much for me, although I played it and beat it and liked it at the time, but I don't really remember too much about it. Next up, we have a few Star Wars games. So Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. This was a gift from my best friend, and I loved the first game. He told me to play the first game, and I was not into RPGs at that time when that came out, but something about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic really sucked me in right away from the very beginning. I always thought turn-based combat was cheap and uninteresting, and these games changed my mind about that. And the second one in particular was a little bit darker and had a more intense storyline, and really it contained almost everything that made the first game great, but also went a little bit deeper in some aspects. So this was a fantastic game. Not, in my opinion, not as good as the first one. This was done by Obsidian rather than BioWare, so it feels a little bit different, but it was a fantastic game. Alright, here's the next Star Wars game, which is actually a collection. It's Star Wars Fan Favorites #1. I unfortunately never got Star Wars Fan Favorites #2, but this one contains Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 and Republic Commando. And I already owned all three of these games on different platforms like PS2, Xbox, so I'm not sure why I got this, maybe just to consolidate that all onto a PC. But yeah, Star Wars Fan Favorites #1. If you don't have any of these games, at the time, if you didn't have any of them or didn't have two of them, this was a good deal because it was not that expensive. At least, not when I got it. But what came out before that, I believe, was this, which was a $50 game, Star Wars The Best of PC, 5 of the greatest Star Wars games ever. And this contains Star Wars Empire at War, which is an awesome RTS game where you can play on the ground and in space. Knights of the Old Republic 1, which is a classic RPG. Battlefront 1, which is a classic shooter. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, which is an excellent action RPG. Really, and then Star Wars Republic Commando. So I have at least 3 copies of Battlefront and Republic Commando. But yeah, Star Wars The Best of PC. This was an amazing Christmas present from my mom, actually. And I installed all 5 games and played all of them. I think I finished all of them like before February, probably. Star Wars and video games goes so well together. Next up is Quake 4, one of my favorite first-person shooters on PC, and my brother recently got into this because I think it was on Game Pass, and he loved it as well. It has a really unique story, even if the gameplay can feel a little bit generic, the first-person shooter. It feels like the Quake games, not as fast as like Unreal, but not as floaty as like a Halo or anything. So it's solid combat, and it has a decent story and great atmosphere. And this was around the time, I think this came out around the time where, yeah, 2005. So FPS games on the PC were starting to look a lot better with like ray tracing or path tracing or whatever it was. And there was some really great lighting and atmosphere and particle effects in this game that made it kind of stand out. But I think the generic gameplay kind of put some people off. They like maybe the older Quake games a little bit better. But this was the first Quake game that I played and the one that I love. Alright, next up is Diablo 3. So I bought this game because of the hype around Diablo 3. I never played Diablo 1 or 2, but I considered myself a big Blizzard fan because of StarCraft 2, and this came out a little bit after that. And it looked like a fun, hack and slash or ARPG or whatever you want to call it. It looked interesting and dark. And I got Error 37 just like everybody else, and wasn't able to play this game for like the first week that I owned it. But I did eventually put about 60 hours into it. But I never really had any desire to go back to it or back to the Diablo series after that. Maybe I'll eventually check out Diablo 2 because I know that's the great classic one that everyone recommends. But at the time, I had my fun with Diablo 3, but it wasn't like a favorite of mine or anything. Last two in the liked but didn't love. This is Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. So this is also available on the PS2, but it's not like the other Lord of the Rings games at all. It's not really a hack and slash, it's kind of an adventure game. It's not amazing, but it's better than most people give it credit for. You start out in the Shire, and it follows like a very similar story to the first movie, the first book. It has some great art design, and I love this artwork on the back. And it has all voice acting that's really good. It has some great locations. It just has some really strange quests and some really strange moments that you kind of have to get through in order to start enjoying it. But it's not terrible, and you get to play as a range of characters from Frodo, Aragorn, and Gandalf eventually. It's not like mind-blowingly good or anything, but I've played through it a few times, and it's a lot of fun. Especially if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you would probably enjoy it. But the better Middle-earth game is this right here, Shadow of Mordor. So you probably know this game. It's pretty much a classic at this point. I think this one and its sequel are on Game Pass. Everybody's played these at this point, I think. Introduced the open world experience for Lord of the Rings. Maybe a little bit later than like Lord of the Rings Online did, but this was what a lot of people wanted out of Middle-earth. Something darker, maybe a little bit more difficult, M-rated, so it was kind of cool to see that, especially for the time that it came out. It felt a little bit like revolutionary in a way. And that's it for the liked but didn't love, so now I'm going to switch it up on you and go to games that I either didn't like or just didn't play that much. So first is another Lord of the Rings Online. So I maybe put 5 hours into this that were actual gameplay. I think my played time maybe said 20 or 25 hours, but that was just from like having the game open or idling on the menu or idling somewhere in-game. It's a really cool MMO, but I just couldn't get into MMOs after Guild Wars broke my heart. I loved Guild Wars and played a lot of it, but it was Guild Wars and RuneScape were the only MMOs that I really stuck with for any amount of time. But Lord of the Rings Online is still kind of going strong, I guess. I just never really got into it for whatever reason. Next up is Battlefield 2142. So, not to be confused with Battlefield 2042, this one came out shortly after Battlefield 2. And I just didn't really love the controls for some reason. I think a lot of it had to do with the advanced technology, the mechs, and the vehicles just didn't feel great. I can't remember a single map. I can't remember if the maps were cool or interesting. I'm guessing they're probably just whatever, plain forgettable, because I don't remember at all. The one thing I do remember that was great about this game, which other Battlefield games have, but there was 64 player mode, which was absolutely massive, especially for the time. And there were a lot of different weapons and, it says on the back, gadgets to play with and figure out, but this game just didn't really grab me ever, not like Battlefield 2 or Battlefield 1942. Next up is a game that was a gift from a friend of mine from a while back, Neverwinter Nights 2 Gold. So this includes the original game and then the expansion Mask of the Betrayer. And this thing is also really heavy, so we're going to have to open this up. So this is by Obsidian, published by Atari. So the first thing in here is a guide, I guess, but it's almost 200 pages long. Imagine reading that before playing the game. Wow. So it has details on classes, what their strengths and weaknesses are. It's a lot of classes. Control options, view options. Oh my gosh, just everything about this game. And then this looks like spells per day. I'm not sure what this means. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me what this page means, but I have no idea. It says cleric spells per day, base spells per day, and then has some kind of chart that looks like a scaling of spells. Skills by prestige class. See, this is way too in-depth for me. This is why I never got into Neverwinter Nights. But, I mean, if you wanted to get into it, you could probably just use this manual that it came with, which is pretty cool, I guess, but it was a little too over my head at the time. Next is Two Worlds 2, which I did play a lot, but I didn't love it. I don't know why I played it so much. I think I liked the world design, and I did like the character design too. Wow, there's something in here. It's like a phone number? No, it's the code. This must be the game key. That's weird. I didn't know there was a handwritten note inside this big box. But yeah, the Two Worlds games weren't, at least in the US, they weren't very well loved. They had a jankiness to them, and the world design and the art style was kind of generic in a way. But for some reason, I beat this game a few times and just liked creating the character, and I liked fighting the dragon. I don't remember a ton about this game except that for some reason I kept playing it even though I didn't love it. Maybe I did love it. Here's another one that I just couldn't get into, Heroes. I just didn't really get into this series, Heroes of Might and Magic 5. I just didn't click with the gameplay, even though this world design is incredible and this game looks amazing. And I think the Heroes of Might and Magic series is pretty well loved by PC gamers. The gameplay just didn't really click for me. Although it's a super cool game with, like, excellent world design, art style, and really interesting story, it sounds like. Just couldn't get into the gameplay. Next is another game like Two Worlds 2. I played it a lot, just didn't really love it, so I don't know why I played it so much. Drakensang, The Dark Eye. This is kind of a cool box, though, on the interior. I like when they have these wings that show some additional art. Get that a little closer. But it seemed like a really cool fantasy story that I would be interested in. I was a sucker for dragons in anything. I used to draw dragons. I would find every dragon movie you could ever imagine. I was obsessed with dragons for a long time. And I played this game, I just don't really remember much about it. I played it a couple times, and maybe I'll look this one up and see if there's any reason to go back to it, because it still catches my eye, that cover. That dragon at the top, and the interesting font and title. Next up is objectively a good game. I only played Call of Duty World at War for the zombies, though. So I didn't spend a ton of time like on the multiplayer or on the campaign. Really, this was for the zombies, which I liked but didn't love. I thought I would love the zombies, but I think Left 4 Dead spoiled me, because the zombie combat in Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 is top tier. And I don't think any other zombie game will ever top Left 4 Dead for me. Alright, last of the games that I didn't love or didn't play, Counter-Strike Source. So, we didn't have internet when I first got this game. So, I don't know if... I guess you can play with bots, but I really wanted to play online, and I thought I would be able to. And I wasn't able to. I could never get the online working. The official Counter-Strike bot is also included for offline skirmish play. I liked the game and I played against bots for a while, but because I couldn't do the multiplayer for whatever reason, I didn't stick with Counter-Strike. I don't love Games like Counter-Strike or Valorant, they're fun, but they're just not for me. Alright, and that's it for the games that I liked and the games that I didn't like or didn't play. So now we're going to get into my absolute favorites of my big box PC collection. Starting with an absolute classic, the Orange Box. This was a Christmas present from my mom as well, which was, quote, the best deal in gaming at the time. 5 games, 1 box. Half-Life 2 with Episode 1 and 2, Portal, and Team Fortress 2. Half-Life 2 and Episode 2 were incredible. Portal is one of my favorite puzzle games, maybe my favorite puzzle game of all time. And Team Fortress 2 I just don't really care about. But I loved the Orange Box. It was such a cool thing to have all these great games in one. And Portal was really the standout for me. I played Portal a million times, back to back to back, actually. It blew my mind, it blew me away, and is still one of the greatest puzzle games ever made. The Orange Box, an absolute classic of big box PC games. Next is another one of my all-time favorite games, period, is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and this is the Legendary Edition, which came with the 3 expansions, so Dawnguard, Hearthfire, and Dragonborn. And I can't even count how many times I've played and beat Skyrim. I still got the map in this one because I have probably 5 copies of Skyrim, and I think every copy I bought came with its own map. But I played Skyrim on PC the most, so hundreds of hours on PC, even after beating it a couple times on my Xbox 360 back in the day. And I like this Legendary Edition because it just combined all the DLCs together. And Skyrim is best experienced on PC, in my opinion. Next up is the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, and this is a Game of the Year edition, so it has Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles DLC, and this thing is heavy too, so I'm going to open this up and look. It's got a pretty thick manual. I like the gameplay controls diagram on the back. That's kind of old school. The manual talks about characters, inventory, magic, races, spells, skills. But I think the weight of this one is the 2 discs in here, and the map too. And there's also just a big fat piece of white cardboard. But yeah, Oblivion Game of the Year edition. Absolute classic to have on PC. Next up is Medieval 2 Total War. This was one of my most played RTS games of all time. And I haven't really gone back to it that much. The one I go back to is Rome Total War. But Medieval 2 was just on another level of scale and of the amount of different armies and history. 8-player battles, 21 different factions. This had some seriously intense multiplayer and awesome graphics, amazing huge scale battles. And this one's pretty heavy, so I'm going to look inside. So this came with a documentary from the History Channel called The Crusades, which I don't think this is a DVD. There's 2 discs in there. I've never watched this. I have no idea what it's about. 2 discs to install, as most PC games back then had more than 1 disc to install, and then the manual, which is also pretty thick. But absolute classic real-time strategy game for PC, Medieval 2 Total War. Probably, in my opinion, the best game that ever came from that series. Even better than Rome Total War, even though Rome is the one that I go back to the most. I think Medieval 2 topped it in pretty much every way. Next up is Left 4 Dead, and I mentioned this one earlier, was just the best zombie shooting game ever made, and ruined me for zombie games going forward. There is nothing like mowing down hordes of zombies in this game. The controls are absolutely perfect. Every character plays a little bit different, but great in their own way. And this was peak multiplayer experience. Left 4 Dead, the first one, is my favorite, even though I did play both. Left 4 Dead blew me away. when I first played it, and it's still so fun to this day. Next is a game I bought a couple times, eventually landed on this one, Battlefield 2, the complete collection. So it includes the base game and 3 expansions, which are Special Forces, Euroforce, and Armored Fury. I don't remember much about the expansions, but some of you may remember the amazing trailer for Battlefield 2 that was on GameTrailers.com, where a multiplayer match was happening and somebody shot a rocket at a helicopter, and because the physics and hitboxes were so detailed, the rocket passes through the opening of the helicopter and doesn't touch anything. It just passes right through. And that just blew me away as a kid. I knew I had to have this game. And the multiplayer absolutely kicked my butt. And this was another one I played a lot against bots. But it was one of the most fun shooter experiences and one of the main reasons I got hooked on multiplayer online first-person shooting. Battlefield 2 was an absolute classic. Next up is Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, a game I've talked about on this channel before. Sometimes I forget I had the big box version of it, because I got it on Steam a while back and I just play it from there. I'll never forget my brother's biggest regret of his entire life is that he tried to get me this game for the Xbox or Xbox 360, I guess, and the guy at GameStop told him that it was terrible and not to get it. I do think the Xbox or console version had lower scores than the PC version did. I don't know, but he regrets that to this day. But Dark Messiah, Might and Magic is one of my favorite games, and a awesome, awesome underrated RPG. First-person RPG, which, you know, similar to the Elder Scrolls games, but this one felt a lot more free. And those of you who played it will remember the kick. The kick is the ultimate weapon in Dark Messiah. Next up, one of my favorite series of all time, Mass Effect. I have the original game in big box on PC. Wow, this came with a Alienware giveaway. Win an Alienware Area 51 PC. I never entered, I don't think, but a funny thing about my history with the Mass Effect series was that I played all 3 games of the trilogy on different consoles for some reason. I played the first one on PC, obviously, the second one on my Xbox 360, and the third one on my Wii U, which I feel like is kind of the ideal place to play each of them, or at least I thought that until the Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out, and those games on PC are absolutely perfection. So if you haven't already, wait for a sale, but get the Mass Effect Legendary Edition on Steam. It is worth every penny. Next is another favorite series of mine. It's Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time trilogy. So this came with all 3 games. Sands of Time, Warrior Within, and The Two Thrones. In my opinion, some of the best puzzle platformers. I guess action puzzle platformers, really, because there's a lot of combat, especially in Warrior Within and Two Thrones. And The Two Thrones has some of the most cinematic experiences of the entire trilogy, although my favorite is still the first one, The Sands of Time. But really, you can't go wrong with any of these 3, and they're available on online platforms now, like GOG, and I think you can even get these on myabandonware.com. But I like having these a physical copy for PC, because this is one of my favorite trilogies of all time, maybe just behind Mass Effect trilogy. Amazing games that hold up really well, in my opinion. Next is kind of a unique one. It's Trine, and this was a gift, a birthday present from my friend. And this had 3-way co-op, a knight, an archer, and a wizard. And that's exactly how me, my brother, and our best friend used to play when we would play pretend in the backyard as kids. My friend Reed would be the wizard, I would be the knight, and my brother would be the archer. So this was pretty much the perfect video game for us to play together. And this was a ton of fun. I think most people who have played this would consider this kind of a classic at this point. I did play the sequel, but I really just remember this first one and how fun it was and how awesome the co-op multiplayer was. Really awesome graphics, side-scrolling, unique art design, really cool world, and interesting gameplay. Really cool game, and kind of surprised me at the time with how fun it was. Caught a lot of people off guard, I think. Next up is BioShock Infinite. I owned the other BioShock games on other platforms, but BioShock Infinite was the only one I had on PC. And I can only remember a few games that I played through faster than BioShock Infinite. It was one of those games where you felt like you had to binge the whole thing, like just could not put it down. It was so much fun and such a cool story. No spoilers, but it did feel a little bit different than the first game and a lot different than the second game, but I always thought it was pretty mind-blowing and really, really fun. Next is Gothic 3, which we already looked at my Forsaken Gods expansion, but I have the original Gothic 3, which I got on eBay many, many years ago. Just one of my absolute favorite games of all time, one of the most underrated RPGs ever. But a friend of my brother's was cleaning out his collection and actually gave this to me, which is like a steel book collector's edition, which has the expansion for Forsaken Gods inside. It also comes with a soundtrack CD, a making of DVD, and a full world map of Murtana. So this was a really awesome gift from my brother's friend. And the soundtrack is in my car. Actually, I would listen to Vista Point on repeat from this soundtrack. One of the most beautiful arrangements from like a fantasy RPG. Love that song and love that game. Next up, the ultimate heartbreak, Guild Wars. So Guild Wars was a unique MMO back in the day. It was a one-time purchase to get in. So when I bought this, the original game was $20. And you didn't have to pay a monthly subscription. It was, everything else was free, you know, after that. But I spent many hundreds of hours on many different characters in Guild Wars across all of its expansions. And when Guild Wars 2 came out, I thought it would be the same again, and it just wasn't the same for me. And I never went back to the first one after that. I don't know if it's still available to play. Probably it is, but I had multiple level 20 characters completely maxed out on the original base game, this expansion, and the other ones I can't remember the names of, but I had a warrior, a necromancer, and a healer. I can't remember the name of that class either. But man, these games sucked so much of my late high school years. I remember the in-game warnings that would say, "You've been playing for X hours, please take a break." And my best friend and I played all through the night one night, and the highest we got to was, "You've been playing for 16 hours, please take a break." So that was finally what did us in. But so Guild Wars 2 came out, and I didn't really like it, and I never went back to the first one. It was kind of heartbreaking. But next up, one of my all-time favorite games, one of the probably the best real-time strategy game ever made, StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. And I'll just never forget this game. And I'll never forget the hype around it either. The hype from Game Informer, from longtime fans, from GameTrailers.com. This game just exceeded all of that hype somehow and was a perfect strategy game, a perfect multiplayer game, and a perfect esports game. And this game just has a special place in my heart. It was the first time I really got into competitive multiplayer, at least in the RTS genre, and it really got me into a lot of YouTube personalities that I took a lot of inspiration from, like Day9 and Husky, Grubby. But this game was absolutely immaculate, and really it still is. This game is perfection and still somehow one of the best looking PC games ever made. It still looks incredible. If you play this game, play through the campaign, the final couple of missions on ultra graphics will still blow you away, even though this game came out in 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there. Still one of the best looking games ever made. Just an iconic iconic game in an iconic franchise. And I have the big box for Legacy of the Void. I bought Heart of the Swarm digitally only, which I kind of regret because I'd like to have the big boxes of all three of them, but I did love both Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void so much, although Wings of Liberty will always be my favorite one. It introduced me to the series and set a standard for trolls and balance in RTS games. But I do really love Legacy of the Void and Heart of the Swarm too. And last but not least, my favorite game series on the PC, which I don't know why I didn't talk about these games in my favorite games of all time video, but I'm going to talk about them now, and it's The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth. I was a Lord of the Rings fan from birth, pretty much, and I was a kid when the Fellowship of the Ring came out in theaters, and I was already a fan of Lord of the Rings from reading the books and reading The Hobbit, and from having like action figures and watching the animated movies. And I was already a fan of strategy games from playing Command and Conquer, Red Alert, and Empire Earth and stuff like that. And then Battle for Middle-earth came out, and I still remember the trailers on GameTrailers.com and IGN.com, and I couldn't believe the amount of detail that some of the characters and the units and environments had in that game. And this first game is really special because it captures the story of the first of really the trilogy of movies. It goes from Fellowship all the way through Return of the King, and you get to play every single battle and even some battles that were not shown in the movies. There's lots of special units and characters that you get to control, and you can not only play through the movie's storyline from the perspective of the good guys who win and are the main characters of the movies and books, but you can play as the evil campaign as well. You play as Mordor or Isengard or goblins or whatever, and it's got a completely rewritten story if you play as the bad guys, which is just incredible. And this game is still one of my all-time favorites and is still just really fun to play and really holds up in terms of its art style and its design. It really has not aged poorly at all. And even better than the first game is the second one, which has its own unique storyline with updated graphics, bigger maps, more units, better online, a map editor, which maybe the first one had a map editor too, but look how thick this manual is. Maybe it doesn't look that thick on here, but man. Look, I wanted this so bad. Look at this custom keyboard with shortcuts, short keys for different actions. Man, I should have got that. That would have been a great investment. But yeah, 60-page manual. I love these. These are special abilities that you get as you defeat units or get resources. You get like a resource to purchase those, and those powers you activate from like God mode, basically. Now I'm gonna have to go back and play through all these games. But yeah, this one I remember as having the most discs to install this game. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh gosh. 6 discs to install. Man, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore, but if I ever did, like boot up an old PC of mine or something, I could still install these games, still have them, all the discs, the boxes, the game keys. These are some really special games. And not only were the first 2 games really good, but the expansion I really liked a lot as well. It added new maps, new factions, new powers, and it was a little more like over the top. Like, look at this wolf character. That's not like anything from the books or the movies, but it just had some really cool stuff. And I'm not sure if it was this one or if it was this expansion or if it was the original version of Battle for Middle-earth 2, but you could create your own hero units and customize them. Not only their look, but their name, their class, and their powers. And you had a certain amount of points you could use to give them whatever powers, armor, strength, health, speed, and that kind of thing. But you could spend hours and hours customizing your own unique hero units, and how powerful they were determined how much they cost to summon. And it was just such a unique and interesting thing that I really liked about those games. And not only do I own them all on their own, but I also bought the Battle for Middle-earth anthology. I think I bought this when I was a little bit older, and I wasn't sure if I had my copies of those games. They were in that big cardboard box that was like in the attic at my parents' house or something. And I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to find it, or afraid that I wouldn't be able to play those games again, so I bought this. And I got it on a pretty good sale. I maybe mentioned it a couple times, but I bought a lot of these games on sale or on clearance at Target back in the day when, I don't know, I mean, I guess Target might still have PC games, but at some point they were like clearing these out. These PC games, they were putting them on the clearance rack. Like I mentioned, Dungeon Lords earlier was like $2. And I think at least one of the Star Wars collections I got from there for like 10 or 15. And Battle for Middle-earth Anthology for like 20. So, I don't know, at least back in the day, Target clearance rack was like a treasure trove for finding PC games and good deals on them. So that's it. That's my big box PC collection, and I didn't script anything for this video other than the intro, but just wanted to say thanks for watching, and if you stuck around this long, thank you for doing that. This is a different type of video that I don't normally do, but I just saw that box in my house and I wanted to make the video, so I did, and I'm glad I did because there's a lot of memories attached to these old big box PC games. Each one has their own unique quirks, and whether I love them or not, they each have their own unique memory and special place in my heart. So thanks for going on that journey with me. If you want to subscribe and like the video, I'd appreciate it. And let me know in the comments if you've played any of these games, or if you have any favorites of your own of any big box PC games that you still have, or like to still play, or just like to look at. Any memories with big box PC games, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.